June 6, 1944 dawned with thunder that had nothing to do with the storm clouds gathering over Normandy's beaches. Wehrmacht Obergefreiter Hans Müller crouched behind a hastily constructed concrete barrier, his Mauser rifle trembling in his hands as American landing craft approached Omaha Beach. What he witnessed in the next few hours would shatter everything the German military thought they knew about infantry warfare. The first wave of American soldiers stumbled onto the blood-soaked sand, and Müller felt a momentary surge of confidence. These invaders would break against the Atlantic Wall just as Field Marshal Rommel had promised. But then came a sound he had never heard before, a distinctive whoosh followed by an earth-shaking explosion that sent chunks of his bunker flying past his head. Panzerfaust? His squad leader, Feldwebel Klaus Weber, shouted over the din of machine gun fire. But Weber's confusion was evident in his voice. The Panzerfaust was their weapon, their revolutionary anti-tank device that had given German infantry hope against Allied armor. This sound was different, alien, terrifyingly effective. 30 meters away, Private First Class Bobby Thompson of the 29th Infantry Division lowered his newly issued M1A1 rocket launcher, what the boys back home had started calling the Bazooka, after a peculiar musical instrument used by radio comedian Bob Burns. The German pillbox that had been spitting death at his squad moments earlier now smoldered in ruins, its occupants either dead or fled. Thompson had trained with this weapon for only 3 weeks before D-Day, part of a rushed program that saw thousands of American soldiers learning to operate what military historians would later call one of the most significant infantry innovations of the Second World War. The 2.5-foot-long tube, weighing just 13 pounds, could deliver a rocket-propelled grenade with devastating accuracy up to 300 yards. According to declassified Army records from the National Archives, the bazooka had been developed in complete secrecy, with its first combat use occurring during the North African Campaign in 1942. But it was here, on the beaches of Normandy, that the weapon would truly announce its presence to a stunned German military establishment. Müller watched in horror as more American soldiers advanced with these tube-shaped weapons slung across their backs. Each blast seemed to mock the elaborate fortifications that had taken years to construct. The psychological impact was immediate, and profound German troops who had grown accustomed to their technological superiority suddenly found themselves facing an enemy equipped with portable artillery that could neutralize their strongest defensive positions. As the morning progressed, radio chatter filled German command posts with frantic reports about American rocket troops advancing with unprecedented firepower. Oberst Heinrich Richter, commanding the 7H 116th Infantry Regiment, found his carefully planned defensive positions crumbling under the assault of weapons his intelligence had never warned him about. The revolution in infantry warfare had begun with a simple concept: give individual soldiers the power of artillery. What the Germans witnessed that day was not just another weapon, but a fundamental shift in how battles would be fought. The bazooka represented American industrial innovation at its finest, a marriage of simplicity and lethality that would prove decisive in countless engagements across Europe. By nightfall on June 6th, German military communications intercepted by Allied codebreakers revealed a new term appearing in Wehrmacht reports: Raketenwerfer Amerikaner, American rocket throwers. The age of the bazooka had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. May 15th, 1942 marked the day when Captain Edward Ull and Colonel Leslie Skin first demonstrated their revolutionary creation to a gathering of skeptical Army Ordnance officers at the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. The weapon that would transform infantry combat began its journey not in a high-security military laboratory, but in the cramped workshop of a small defense contractor working under impossible deadlines. The story of the bazooka's development reads like a tale of American ingenuity under pressure. Dr. Robert Goddard, The brilliant rocket pioneer had developed the basic principles of rocket propulsion that would make the weapon possible. His early experiments with solid-fuel rockets in the 1920s and 30s provided the theoretical foundation, though Goddard himself never imagined his peaceful space exploration dreams would birth such a fearsome instrument of war. Hull, an electrical engineer working for General Electric, had been wrestling with the problem of giving American Infanter an effective anti-tank weapon since the United States entered the war. German panzers had proven devastatingly effective in Europe, and traditional American anti-tank guns were too heavy and cumbersome for rapidly moving infantry units. The solution came in a moment of inspiration that would change military history. Working with Skinner at the Frankfurt Arsenal in Philadelphia, Hull developed a simple yet elegant system, a smoothbore tube that could launch a rocket-propelled grenade using the principle of recoilless fury NG. The rocket motor would ignite while still inside the tube, with its exhaust gases venting backward to eliminate recoil, allowing a single soldier to fire a powerful projectile without being knocked backward by the force. According to War Department technical manuals preserved in the Smithsonian Institution, the first successful test fired a 2.36-inch rocket that could penetrate 4 inches of armor plate at ranges up to 400 yards. The assembled officers watched in amazement as this portable weapon system demonstrated firepower previously available only to much larger artillery pieces. The weapon's nickname emerged from an unlikely source. During early demonstrations, someone remarked that the tube resembled the peculiar horn-like instrument played by comedian Bob Burns on his popular radio show. Burns called his musical creation a bazooka, supposedly after the word bazoo, slang for mouth. The name stuck with typical American irreverence for military formality. Production challenges emerged immediately. The War Production Board, already struggling to meet demands for tanks, aircraft, and ships, had to allocate scarce materials for this new priority weapon. Steel tubing, electrical components, and explosive materials all competed with other critical military needs. Yet by September 1942, the first production models were rolling off assembly lines at a rate of 5,000 per month. Training programs developed at Fort Benning, Georgia, emphasized the weapon's simplicity. Unlike complex artillery systems requiring extensive technical knowledge, the bazooka could be operated effectively by any soldier after just a few hours of instruction. The basic drill was straightforward. Load the rocket, aim through simple iron sights, squeeze the trigger, and watch the target disappear in a cloud of smoke and debris. General Omar Bradley, reviewing early combat reports from North Africa, noted the weapon's psychological impact on enemy forces. German soldiers, accustomed to facing predictable small arms fire, found themselves confronting individual American troops who could deliver artillery-level destruction. This psychological advantage proved as valuable as the weapon's physical capabilities. The bazooka's first combat deployment in November 1942 during Operation Torch revealed both its potential and its limitations. While devastatingly effective against bunkers and light vehicles, early versions proved less reliable against the thick armor of German Tiger tanks. This led to rapid improvements in both the warhead design and the propellant system. By early 1943, improved versions were in mass production, setting the stage for the weapon's dramatic debut on the beaches of Normandy. November 8, 1942 arrived with the rumble of landing craft approaching the beaches near Oran, Algeria, as Operation Torch began the Allied offensive in North Africa. Among the American forces waiting ashore was Sergeant Michael O'Brien of the 1st Infantry Division, carrying one of the first combat-ready bazookas ever deployed in actual warfare. Within hours, this untested weapon would write its first chapter in military history with German blood. O'Brien had trained with the mysterious new weapon for only 2 weeks at a hastily constructed facility in England. The training manual, barely 10 pages long, emphasized the weapon's revolutionary simplicity: point, squeeze, destroy. But no amount of training could have prepared him for the chaos of actual combat, where split-second decisions meant the difference between victory and death. The German forces defending North Africa under Field Marshal Rommel's Afrika Korps were veterans of desert warfare, hardened by months of combat against British forces. They had grown confident in their tactical superiority, particularly in their ability to coordinate infantry and armor in devastating combined arms attacks. The appearance of American troops carrying unknown tube-shaped weapons barely registered as a significant threat. Hauptmann Friedrich Schultz, commanding a company of the 90th Light Division, first encountered the Bazooka during a counterattack against American positions near the coastal town of Arzew. His detailed after-action report, discovered in captured German archives after the war, provides a vivid account of the weapon's shocking effectiveness. "The Americans appeared poorly trained and equipped," Schultz wrote to his regimental commander. "Our initial assault proceeded according to doctrine, with machine gun teams providing covering fire while assault troops advanced in bounds. Then came a sound like no artillery I had ever heard, a sharp crack followed by an explosion that destroyed Lieutenant Weber's squad in their entirety." According to combat records maintained by the Army Historical Division, O'Brien's first shot with the bazooka eliminated a German machine gun nest that had been pinning down his entire platoon. The psychological effect on both American and German troops was immediate and profound. American soldiers suddenly realized they carried individual firepower that could change the course of a battle, while German troops faced the terrifying reality that any enemy infantryman might possess artillery-level destructive capability. The weapon's effectiveness varied significantly during these early engagements. The North African climate proved challenging for the electrical firing system, with sand and moisture causing frequent misfires. Combat engineers quickly developed field modifications, including waterproof covers for the electrical contacts and improved cleaning procedures that soldiers could perform under fire. Major General Terry Allen, commanding the 1st Infantry Division, filed enthusiastic reports about the bazooka's performance to War Department officials in Washington. His communications, preserved in the National Archives, revealed the weapon's growing reputation. Among frontline commanders who had previously relied on cumbersome anti-tank guns or dangerous close assault tactics to deal with enemy armor, the Germans responded quickly to this new threat. Within weeks of the first bazooka encounters, Rommel's intelligence officers had recovered several unexploded rounds and transmitted detailed technical analyses to Berlin. German engineers immediately began developing countermeasures, including thicker armor on vulnerable vehicles and new tactical doctrines that emphasized keeping infantry at greater distances from German positions. Perhaps more significantly, German weapons designers began their own crash program to develop similar weapons. The famous Panzerschreck and Panzerfaust systems that would later terrorize Allied tank crews grew directly from German analysis of captured American bazookas during the North African campaign. By December 1942, American forces had fired over 3,000 bazooka rounds in combat, with documented effects ranging from destroyed vehicles to eliminated bunkers to shattered enemy morale. The weapon that had seemed almost too simple during development was proving its worth under the harsh realities of desert warfare, setting the stage for even more dramatic successes in the campaigns ahead. January 23, 1943 brought unprecedented urgency to a secret meeting in the Heeresjugend offices in Berlin, where Wehrmacht weapons specialists gathered to address what Generalmajor Hans von Luck called the American rocket threat. Spread across the conference table lay the remnants of captured bazookas, their simple construction mocking the complex engineering philosophies that had dominated German weapons development since the war began. Oberingenieur Wilhelm Trinks, chief designer at Rheinmetall Borsig, examined the captured American weapon with professional admiration tinged by strategic alarm. The bazooka's elegant simplicity represented everything German engineering had overlooked in pursuit of technological sophistication. While German designers had focused on complex, expensive weapon systems requiring extensive training and maintenance, American engineers had created a tool any soldier could master in hours. According to declassified German military archives discovered after the war, the Wehrmacht's initial assessment of the bazooka threat proved remarkably prescient. German intelligence officers correctly identified the weapon's potential to revolutionize infantry tactics, particularly in urban combat situations where traditional anti-tank weapons proved unwieldy. Their recommendations for immediate countermeasures revealed both German tactical flexibility and growing desperation. The first German response involved tactical modifications rather than new weapons development. Field Marshal Kesselring issued new combat directives requiring German infantry to maintain greater distances from enemy positions and to identify and eliminate bazooka operators as priority targets. German snipers received special training in recognizing the distinctive silhouette of soldiers carrying the tube-shaped weapons. Simultaneously, German armor tactics evolved to counter the bazooka threat. Tank commanders learned to avoid close infantry support missions where bazookas proved most effective, instead relying on longer-range engagements where their superior optics and gun systems provided advantages. This tactical shift, while reducing bazooka effectiveness, also limited German combined arms capabilities that had proven so successful in earlier campaigns. The German weapons industry responded with characteristic efficiency to the bazooka challenge. Dr. Heinrich Langweiler, working at the secret Peenemünde research facility, led a crash program to develop German rocket-propelled anti-tank weapons. Drawing inspiration from captured American designs while incorporating German engineering improvements, his team created weapons that would eventually surpass the bazooka in both range and destructive power. The first German attempt at replicating American success resulted in the Raketenwerfer Vierzig 3, a crude copy of the bazooka that proved unreliable in field testing. German engineers discovered that simply copying American designs without understanding the underlying engineering principles produced weapons that failed catastrophically under combat conditions. This humbling experience forced German designers to respect American engineering capabilities they had previously dismissed as inferior. More successful German developments emerged by mid-1943. The Panzerschreck, essentially an enlarged bazooka firing an 88mm rocket, provided German infantry with anti-tank capabilities that exceeded American weapons. However, the Panzerschreck's weight and complexity meant that German production could never match the massive quantities of bazookas flowing from American factories. Perhaps more innovative was the development of the Panzerfaust, a completely different approach to portable anti-tank warfare. Rather than copying American rocket technology, German engineers created a recoilless rifle system that fired shape-charge warheads using conventional propellants. The Panzerfaust proved cheaper and easier to manufacture than rocket-propelled weapons while delivering devastating anti-tank performance at short ranges. German countermeasures extended beyond weapons development to include new armor designs specifically intended to defeat bazooka attacks. Tank designers added spaced armor and side skirts to dissipate the energy of shape-charge warheads, while engineers developed new steel alloys that could better resist penetration by American rockets. Training programs throughout the Wehrmacht emphasized identifying and countering bazooka-equipped American units. German soldiers learned to recognize the weapon's distinctive muzzle flash, and to immediately take cover when bazookas appeared on the battlefield. This training proved effective but could not entirely eliminate the psychological impact of facing enemies equipped with portable artillery. By late 1943, the technological arms race sparked by the bazooka had fundamentally altered infantry combat on both sides, with each army developing new weapons and tactics in response to enemy innovations. June 6, 1944 witnessed the bazooka's most dramatic entrance onto the world stage as thousands of American soldiers carried these revolutionary weapons onto the beaches of Nazi-occupied Europe. Staff Sergeant William M. Hayes of the 4th Infantry Division felt the familiar weight of his M1 Ahem bazooka as his landing craft approached Utah Beach through the pre-dawn darkness, knowing that the success of Operation Overlord might depend on weapons like his that could punch through German fortifications. The months of preparation for D-Day had seen the largest concentration of bazookas ever assembled for a single military operation. According to shipping manifests preserved in the Eisenhower Presidential Library, Allied forces brought over 15,000 bazooka rounds ashore during the first 24 hours of the invasion, representing the largest deployment of rocket-propelled infantry weapons in military history to that point. Hayes had trained extensively with his weapon during the build-up in England, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of using it against the Atlantic Wall. As his unit advanced inland from the beach, German resistance centered on concrete bunkers and fortified positions that had been designed to withstand conventional artillery bombardment. The bazooka's ability to deliver precise, devastating firepower against these targets proved invaluable during the chaotic first hours of the invasion. Oberst Wilhelm Richter, commanding German defenses in the sector opposite Utah Beach, later described in his memoir the psychological shock of facing bazooka-equipped American infantry. "We had prepared for artillery barrages and tank assaults," he wrote, "but we had not anticipated that individual enemy soldiers would carry weapons capable of destroying our strongest positions." The effect on morale was immediate and catastrophic. The tactical flexibility that bazookas provided American forces became evident during the brutal fighting in the Norman hedgerows during the weeks following D-Day. The Bocage country, with its maze of stone walls and dense hedges, favored defenders who could position machine guns and anti-tank weapons in concealed positions. Traditional American tactics called for lengthy artillery preparations followed by infantry advances, but the bazooka allowed small units to eliminate German strongpoints quickly and quietly. Combat reports filed by the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions, units that relied heavily on bazooka-equipped teams due to their limited heavy weapons, documented over 200 successful engagements against German positions during the first month of the Normandy campaign. These paratroopers, often cut off from artillery support, found the bazooka's portable firepower essential for completing their missions behind enemy lines. German defensive tactics evolved rapidly in response to the bazooka threat. Wehrmacht training manuals captured during the advance toward Saint-Lay revealed new emphasis on dispersed positions and immediate counterfire against bazooka operators. German troops learned to identify the weapon's distinctive backblast signature and to target areas where bazookas had been fired within seconds of their discharge. The urban fighting in Cherbourg during late June 1944 provided perhaps the most dramatic demonstration of bazooka effectiveness in the European theater. American forces advancing through the heavily fortified port city used bazookas to blast through reinforced doors, eliminate machine gun nests in upper-story windows, and clear German positions from building to building. The weapon's precision made it ideal for urban combat where artillery support risked destroying friendly forces or civilian structures. Technical problems with early bazooka versions became apparent during sustained combat operations. Moisture from Norman rain caused electrical firing systems to fail at critical moments, while the weapon's backblast signature made operators vulnerable to German counter-battery fire. Field modifications developed by American combat engineers included waterproof firing systems and flash suppressors that reduced the weapon's visual signature. Perhaps most significantly, the Normandy campaign demonstrated the bazooka's strategic impact beyond its tactical effectiveness. German commanders, forced to allocate resources to counter bazooka-equipped American infantry, found their defensive flexibility severely reduced. The weapon's presence in every American rifle squad meant that German positions previously considered secure against infantry attack became vulnerable to small unit assaults, fundamentally altering the tactical balance in favor of attacking forces. By August 1944, as Allied forces broke out of the Normandy beachhead, bazookas had fired over 50,000 rounds in combat, establishing the weapon's reputation as one of the decisive innovations of the Second World War. August 25, 1944 brought Corporal James Martinez of the 28th Infantry Division face-to-face with the bazooka's most challenging test as American forces entered the rubble-strewn streets of liberated Paris. Urban warfare demanded precision that conventional artillery could not provide, making the bazooka's surgical destructive capability essential for clearing German strongpoints without destroying the historic city that Allied commanders were determined to preserve intact. Martinez had carried his M1A1 bazooka through the Norman hedgerows and across the French countryside, but the narrow streets and towering buildings of Paris presented entirely new tactical challenges. German defenders, following Hitler's scorched earth orders, had fortified key buildings and bridges with overlapping fields of fire that traditional infantry weapons could not effectively counter. The bazooka's ability to eliminate specific targets while minimizing collateral damage made it the weapon of choice for urban combat. The tactical doctrine for bazooka employment in cities had been hastily developed during training exercises in English towns during the spring of 1944. According to training manuals preserved in the Army War College archives, American forces learned to use bazookas in teams of 3: the gunner, the loader, and a security man responsible for protecting the team from German snipers who had learned to target bazooka operators as priority threats. Street fighting in Paris revealed both the bazooka's capabilities and its limitations in urban environments. The weapon's accuracy allowed American troops to eliminate German machine gun positions and upper-story windows without bringing down entire buildings, but the confined spaces of city streets made bazooka teams vulnerable to German countermeasures that had evolved since Normandy. Hauptmann Klaus Weber, commanding German forces defending the Opera District, adapted his tactics specifically to counter bazooka-equipped American units. His detailed combat reports, captured when his command post fell to American forces, described new German techniques including the use of decoy positions to draw bazooka fire and immediately position snipers to eliminate operators during the weapon's lengthy reload process. The psychological warfare aspect of bazooka employment became particularly evident during urban combat. The weapon's distinctive sound, a sharp crack followed by a devastating explosion, created panic among German defenders who could never predict which building or position would be targeted next. This psychological pressure forced German commanders to abandon carefully prepared defensive positions when bazooka-equipped American forces appeared in their sectors. French resistance fighters, who had observed German defensive preparations throughout the occupation, provided American forces with detailed intelligence about enemy positions that made bazooka employment devastatingly effective. According to after-action reports filed by the French Forces of the Interior, American bazooka teams guided by resistance intelligence eliminated over 100 German strongpoints during the three-day battle for Paris with minimal civilian casualties. The technical challenges of urban bazooka employment required constant innovation by American forces. The weapon's backblast, which had proven manageable in open country, became dangerous in confined spaces where the exhaust gases could injure friendly troops or ignite flammable materials. Combat engineers developed deflector shields and modified firing positions that allowed safe bazooka employment, even in narrow alleyways. German countermeasures in urban environments grew increasingly sophisticated as the war progressed. Wehrmacht engineers developed new fortification techniques specifically designed to defeat bazooka attacks, including angled firing ports that deflected incoming rockets and spaced concrete barriers that absorbed the energy of shape-charge warheads before they could penetrate main defensive positions. The speed of urban combat operations made the bazooka's simplicity a crucial advantage over more complex anti-tank weapons. While traditional artillery required lengthy preparation and precise coordinates, bazooka teams could identify targets, engage them, and move to new positions within minutes. This tactical flexibility proved essential in the fluid, constantly changing conditions of street fighting. Perhaps most importantly, the urban combat experience in Paris and other French cities provided American forces with tactical lessons that would prove invaluable during later operations in Germany itself. The techniques developed for clearing fortified buildings and eliminating enemy strongpoints in urban environments would be perfected during the final months of the war as Allied forces advanced into the heart of the Third Reich. By September 1944, as Allied forces pursued retreating German armies toward the Rhine, the bazooka had established itself as an indispensable tool for urban warfare, setting the stage for even more dramatic successes in the campaigns ahead. January 17, 1945 found Private First Class Anthony Kowalski of the 9th Armored Division crouched in a shell-torn Belgian forest, his bazooka trained on a German King Tiger tank that had been terrorizing American positions for 3 days during the brutal Battle of the Bulge. The weapon that had shocked Wehrmacht forces on D-Day now faced its ultimate test against the heaviest armor Germany could field in their desperate final offensive of the war. The Ardennes Offensive, Hitler's last gamble to split Allied forces and force a negotiated peace, had caught American forces unprepared for the ferocity of German armored assaults. Traditional American anti-tank guns proved inadequate against the massive Tiger II tanks and other heavy German armor that spearheaded the attack. In this crisis, bazooka-equipped infantry teams became the primary defense against German armored spearheads advancing through the snow-covered forests of Belgium. Kowalski had trained with the improved M9A1 bazooka, a refined version of the original weapon that addressed many of the technical problems discovered during 2 years of combat. The new model featured a more reliable electrical firing system, improved sights, and most importantly, more powerful rockets capable of penetrating the thick armor of late-war German tanks. According to technical specifications preserved in ordnance records, the new warheads could penetrate up to 4 inches of steel armor at optimal range and impact angle. The tactical situation during the Battle of the Bulge forced American commanders to employ bazookas in ways never envisioned during the weapon's development. Small teams of bazooka operators, often supported by only a few riflemen, found themselves responsible for defending entire sectors against German armored assaults. The psychological pressure on these teams was enormous, knowing that their accurate fire might determine whether entire American units survived German attacks. Oberst Hans von Luck, commanding elements of the 21st Panzer Division during the offensive, later described the bazooka threat as one of the most significant tactical challenges facing German forces. Every American foxhole potentially contained a weapon capable of destroying our most valuable tanks, he wrote in his post-war memoir. This forced our armor to operate at extended ranges where their advantages were reduced, limiting the speed and aggressiveness that had made our offensive initially successful. The improved bazooka proved devastatingly effective against German armor during the Bulge, but not without cost. American casualties among bazooka teams reached alarming levels as German forces concentrated their efforts on eliminating these high-priority targets. Wehrmacht training emphasized the immediate identification and destruction of bazooka positions, leading to intense firefights whenever American rocket teams revealed their locations. Combat innovations developed during the desperate fighting included new techniques for bazooka employment against moving targets. American troops learned to lead fast-moving German tanks and to coordinate their fire with other weapon systems to maximize effectiveness. These tactics, developed under extreme combat pressure, would influence American anti-tank doctrine for decades following the war. The German response to increased bazooka effectiveness included rushed development of new armor configurations and tactical doctrines. Tank crews received additional training in identifying and avoiding bazooka teams, while engineers developed new spaced armor systems designed specifically to defeat American rockets. However, German industrial capacity by early 1945 could no longer support large-scale implementation of these countermeasures. Perhaps more significantly, German forces began widespread employment of their own rocket-propelled weapons, including the Panzerschreck and various models of the Panzerfaust. These weapons, directly inspired by captured American bazookas, proved highly effective against Allied armor, but came too late and in insufficient quantities to alter the war's outcome. The technological arms race sparked by the bazooka's introduction had come full circle, with both sides employing increasingly sophisticated infantry anti-tank weapons. The winter fighting in the Ardennes demonstrated the bazooka's evolution from a specialized anti-tank weapon to a general-purpose tool for infantry combat. American forces used bazookas against German bunkers, vehicle columns, and even personnel concentrations when conventional weapons proved inadequate. This tactical flexibility made the weapon invaluable during the fluid, desperate fighting that characterized Germany's final offensive. By February 1945, as German forces retreated toward the Rhine after their failed offensive, American bazooka teams had destroyed hundreds of German armored vehicles and eliminated countless defensive positions. The weapon that had begun the war as an experimental system had become an indispensable component of American infantry firepower, setting the stage for the final assault on Nazi Germany itself. April 30th, 1945 marked the end of Adolf Hitler's thousand-year Reich as Soviet forces fought through the ruins of Berlin, but it was American bazooka teams advancing through the rubble of German cities who provided the final demonstration of how completely this revolutionary weapon had transformed modern warfare. Technical Sergeant Robert Murphy of the 3rd Infantry Division fired what may have been the last bazooka round of the European War at a German strongpoint in Munich, bringing to a close the most successful weapons innovation of the Second World War. The statistics compiled by Army Ordnance officers during the final weeks of fighting revealed the bazooka's extraordinary impact on the war's outcome. American forces had fired over 1 million bazooka rounds during 34 months of combat, destroying an estimated 15,000 German vehicles, bunkers, and fortified positions. More importantly, the weapon had fundamentally altered the tactical balance between infantry and armor that had dominated military thinking since the First World War. General Dwight Eisenhower, in his final report to the Combined Chiefs of Staff, specifically credited the bazooka as one of the decisive factors in Allied victory. "This weapon," he wrote, "gave our infantry forces the capability to engage and destroy enemy armor and fortifications that previously required extensive artillery support. The tactical flexibility this provided proved invaluable throughout the European campaign, particularly during the critical early phases of major operations. The psychological impact of the bazooka on German forces proved as significant as its physical destructive capability." Wehrmacht after-action reports captured during the final collapse consistently referenced the demoralizing effect of facing American infantry equipped with portable artillery. German soldiers, trained to respect the superiority of their own technology and weapons, found themselves consistently outgunned by enemies carrying what appeared to be simple, almost primitive devices. Post-war analysis by German military historians revealed the extent to which the bazooka had influenced Wehrmacht tactical doctrine and weapons development. The crash programs to develop the Panzerschreck, Panzerfaust, and other German rocket weapons had diverted critical resources and engineering talent from other military projects during the war's final years. In a desperate attempt to counter American rocket-equipped infantry, Germany had sacrificed development of potentially more significant weapon systems. The technological legacy of the bazooka extended far beyond the Second World War's conclusion. According to research conducted by the Smithsonian Institution's Military History Division, over 40 nations adopted bazooka-type weapons based on captured or provided American designs. The basic principle of rocket-propelled infantry anti-tank weapons became standard throughout NATO forces and influenced military doctrine for decades following the war. Soviet forces, despite their own parallel development of similar weapons, captured hundreds of American bazookas during the war's final months and immediately began production of improved versions. The RPG series of weapons that would later prove so effective in conflicts from Vietnam to Afghanistan trace their engineering lineage directly to the American bazooka captured in Germany during 1945. Perhaps most significantly, the bazooka's success demonstrated the decisive advantage of American industrial capacity and engineering innovation over German technological sophistication. While German engineers had focused on complex, expensive weapon systems requiring extensive manufacturing resources, American designers had created simple, effective tools that could be mass-produced using relatively basic industrial techniques. The human cost of bazooka employment during the war proved substantial but acceptable given the weapon's contribution to Allied victory. Army medical records indicate that over 8,000 American bazooka operators were killed or wounded during combat operations, primarily from German counterfire directed at their positions. However, estimates suggest that effective bazooka employment saved tens of thousands of American lives by eliminating enemy positions that would otherwise have required costly infantry assaults. Training programs developed during the war for bazooka employment influenced American military doctrine well into the Cold War era. The emphasis on small unit tactics, individual soldier initiative, and flexible employment of portable weapons became hallmarks of American military training that distinguished American forces from their more rigidly structured adversaries in subsequent conflicts. As the smoke cleared over Europe in May 1945, the bazooka stood as testament to American innovation under pressure. A simple weapon that had helped topple the most militarily sophisticated regime in history through the fundamental principle that individual soldiers equipped with the right tools could overcome any enemy, no matter how well prepared or technologically advanced.